Unbelievable. I've just bumped into Tom Barry-Cotter. What a great opportunity. We're going to put him into the captain's chair by Melfi Designs and we're going to find out what he's been up to. We'll talk to you soon.
Well, welcome to this episode of Bulwarks and Bulldust, and I'm here with Lee Randall and my other panel member, Johnny Curnow. We're here with also with Tom Barry-Cotter. Very exciting to have Tom Barry-Cotter with us today from FiveBlade. Looking forward to catching up with you, Tom, and finding out what FiveBlade is all about. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Yeah, and been watching some of the episodes, and it's been great. So I absolutely love what you guys are doing. So, but yeah, so FiveBlade, it's obviously a new company, and started at the beginning of this year. So it's an exciting sort of venture for myself. But yeah, so my passion and my background's obviously always been in design and new products. So really the two core things that FiveBlade focuses on, it's in new product development. The first being consulting to marine manufacturers on new product. So basically going into analysing the market, engaging with their customer base, researching the competitors, doing price point analysis, and then building a brief from there that is all centred and focused around a very commercially viable product brief that can then either hand over to that company's design department, or alternatively, that's where the second sort of arm of what we focus on is the end-to-end sort of design delivery of that design based on that product brief. So there's some supplementary things that we can do as well. So when you get into that analysis sort of phase and where the brief building phase one of a project and a whole new product development project, it's you get a very good understanding of the customer needs, the market needs, what's out there, what your product you're going to come out with, what its strengths, weaknesses, and that will be. So we have a great insight then to then hand that over to that company's marketing team, whether it be internal or external. So you can have a great sort of product-focused marketing input on that product, and also sales training input on what we can do with that. So just being that we've been in and around what those needs are, what those market needs will be. And so that's certainly one of the things we can focus on. And secondly, what we can do as well, which is part of probably what I'll talk about a lot today, is looking at long-term, what that company's new product development strategy is going to be. So looking at your sort of capacity planning in terms of your ability to create tooling, your design resources and whatnot. And you can start to sort of lay out what your long-term strategy is. I think it's very important to have a sort of long-term goals, but also a long-term strategy, so you can sort of avoid those reactionary decisions and really sort of have a path that your company can follow and go forward with, but also then be able to know what you're capable of being able to produce. So you're not just chasing every new shiny thing and changing strategy here and there. I think it's very important, for companies, and you see it a lot that. So I chose to sort of go down this path, being industry a while. I think you guys would walk the docks at shows, and you see a lot of, be it new startup companies or could be established brands as well. Just you'll walk past some of their new products and just go like, what were you thinking, and
Or were
they'll
you
flop,
thinking?
or sometimes you see it and they've just absolutely nailed it. So and it comes down to what they call the 5 Ps, I guess. It's in that early stage, that you can erase a lot of those risks out. You're not going to erase it completely, but you certainly want to set yourself up to
You
have
can tell us what those 5 Ps are too, Tom, if you...
the prior preparation prevents piss poor performance.
Okay,
but,
right,
it's an
excellent.
Australian saying. But,
Was that a test then?
Yeah, I just wanted to...
Yeah, I think it was a test.
for our young listeners out there.
But certainly, if you've done that sort of due diligence, on the project before going, these, you get into the larger motor yachts and even smaller, sort of sub 40-foot boats. Tooling processes in the marine industry is very expensive. Whether you're a startup brand or an established brand, there's a lot of investment needed, and it's something that you don't want to get wrong. So it's almost baffling to see, companies just make those mistakes where they go in, a little, somewhat sometimes very underprepared, and you just see it. There's, you have ex-customers that start up their own brands. You have, long established brands, and, you just sometimes just the way that company's structured, they'll just make knee-jerk reactions and decisions that can hurt them when it comes to their new product. So that's where we come in, and we can go through that process and really guide these companies through that process to make sure that you're going to give that product the best chance possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it takes a lot of the risk out of the process, as you say. That's a long time from sort of product inception right through to design and R&D and tooling and pre-production and into production. So there's some big risks, a lot of time, a lot of money involved. And you've got an absolute wealth of experience with, your history and, what you've packed into your working lifespan thus far, which is fabulous. I love the fact that you're consulting. I think that's brilliant. It's for you to go out and share your wealth of knowledge with other manufacturers. And obviously you'd have a very extensive network of very skilled and smart people that you can sort of bring into the fold with what you're offering. But I wouldn't think it would just be for marine. I know you've got a very strong marine background, but I would assume that your offering and process would be adaptable to lots of different industries.
For sure, yeah. I mean, that approach really can cover all. I think, one of the things, I can say that has worked for me personally in the past and in the roles I've been in, I think is understanding, both your customer but also what your core business is, I think is very important. So if you can have an understanding of what that core business is and do it well and refine it and create your identity, based on that first. So I think certainly marine is one area that I'll be hyper-focused on to begin with. Being a new company, you've got to be nimble too. So of course, like it's not all one thing and none of the other. So look, as those opportunities may come up, you sort of have to approach that. But I have to sort of put those same philosophies into my own business as well as not just my clients' projects. In that you've got to look at your own sort of long-term plan, what you're doing, and
Talk
sort
the
of
talk, walk the walk.
assess that. But you constantly sort of every 6 to 12 months, you go back and assess those sort of what your long-term vision is, what you're doing. Are there sort of sands beneath you? Are they shifting? Do you need to be nimble? Is there someone coming in, to take, your market share, or is there other opportunities somewhere else? So you sort of have to, whether it be me on my own or as a leadership team, in one of my clients' companies, you have to be assessing that constantly, and that's something as well that we can help with.
Yeah, that sounds fabulous. Obviously, you've so new name, new brand, new look. Great looking brand, by the way. Very, very contemporary. Of all your own work, I would think, perhaps.
No, this is actually I've used a long friend, Sam Allen from On Fire Design in Auckland, and so he's developed all the branding. I am a big Oscar Piastri fan, and so the orange, I promise, it's not trying to copy McLaren, but no, it looked good, and so no, Sam's done an awesome job on all of the brand work. Website and socials aren't live yet, but they're in the works. It's so I've just been sort of amongst having a 6.5 month pregnant wife, some home renovations, and just working with a few clients already. The website I've just had to sort of keep just kicking down the road a little bit to begin with, but no, certainly it's that'll be up very soon as well.
Congratulations. And the name FiveBlade, any sort of story around that?
Yeah, so FiveBlade, obviously I've had a background in racing, and but whether you have it's a race boat or a pleasure boat, FiveBlade prop's always been sort of considered somewhat of a high performing prop. And very efficient and things like that. So there was I gravitated towards that when I sort of started thinking about names, and I bounced a lot of names. Sam and I bounced a lot of names off each other, and that's what we came down to. And there was some other names that got close, but ultimately FiveBlade won out.
Well done.
I like it. I think it's a good one.
I also like how half of it's cut off like the sashimi makers a la surface drive. I love that.
It's only the bottom third of the blade actually that's pushing you along. Yeah,
let's make sure it's clear.
What is that? Is it 72 mile an hour or something? Isn't it anything over that? And is that the number?
What's that?
With surface piercing?
Look, no. I mean, you can get the prop, out of the water, at planing speeds, on just about any hull. In terms of where it starts becoming more efficient than a fully submerged prop. I know it's about that speed. I think that foil shapes and that, and Lee, you probably know from sailing and the foiling that they're going through. There's some things underwater start happening at that speed. But look, it's for what we're doing with the logo, I think, very happy.
A lot of fun.
So just building on what you talked about with your business strategy going forwards, you're going to be putting yourself in a situation where you're taking a lot of people's passion projects and really trying to commercialise it. That's going to be a hard conversation to have.
It is. And, I've sat in front of, sort of single shareholder, business owners in the industry, very passionate about their projects, and I've sat with, already and gone through the process with some, more multi sort of different structured companies as well, with sort of board management and different leadership structure. And it is, but that's what, speaking with these owners, and I think it's, they get the understanding after a short conversation that, maybe, we're not doing any of this, but this is sort of me seeing a few things at a boat show and, we need some of that. Let's build that. It's all very reactionary. It's very sort of short-term sort of thinking, and a lot of them as well. That the ones that I've chatted to initially, haven't had all that much success lately in their new model development. So it's something we can provide. That's something definitely that can be a challenge to navigate and sort of peel that passion project off. But we're not looking to completely take over the design. We want to collaborate, with our clients as well. It's important that, when we come in as well, you've got to look at what that company that, your easiest customers to sell to first are your own customers, so they're the easiest people to market to. So I think it's very important what their current product is, that you have a look first at what their product identity is. You know, is it a mishmash of everything, or do they have a very sort of known, you know, tangible product identity that if you ask anyone out in the industry, you know, walking the docks, you know, what is that boat, they can give you the same answer. I think that's an important thing to sort of run through and guide first, and then make sure that you are paying heritage, you know, to the past product and what that product identity and that brand identity is. Because like I said, you know, you've got to sort of be concentrating on your core business first, unless that core business is, you know, eroding everywhere from could be a number of factors. But, you know, and that's where you might be forced to say, okay, look, we need to, we're Kodak right now, and we need to look at what's happening, because we're not going to be here in a few years if we stay where we are. But, you know, 9 times out of 10, it's their core business where they've been distracted. They've tried to be everything to everyone and go after too many things and sort of forgotten who their customer is. That's what it's important to sort of make sure you recognise that and really concentrate on that first. And then it's about, okay, you know, what else is out there in the market, you know, what's working, what's not working, and you know, how do we, you know, show ourselves off in a better light and make something that's going to be, you know, commercially viable, that is going to attract, you know, some new customers to the brand.
And I guess the other thing that you always struggle with these sorts of companies is coming up with that fixed value proposition for the end user. And I think we know, being in production boats, both of us for a long time now, you know, customisation is unfortunately the enemy of making money.
Yep.
But it's so hard when you're in startup. You can't be so arrogant to think that you've got everything right, so you try and open the door to client input, and it ends up working against you.
Correct. Yeah. I would say it's one of probably the most overused term I've heard in the industry is we build for custom. You know,
I won't let my guys use it.
Yeah.
I say personalisation.
Yeah, well, there's that, and there's nothing wrong, you know, for having, if you want to go down that path and have that strategy to be a custom builder, then be that, you know, and build all of your long-term goals on being that custom builder. But it's a hard way to do business, and you can understand that, you know, if that's you want to jump into that, you jump into that sort of neck deep. Whereas if really you're just saying that because you haven't executed, you know, your initial product correctly, and you're having so much of the market come and tell you, oh, I'll buy it if you'll do this, this, and this, and you sort of just fall into that you're making all these changes because, you know, you're not quite getting it right, and there might be some other perceived value, or you've got some other, you know, value proposition in that product that people are after, but everything else is sort of changing. Well, that's the perfect sign that you need to, you know, talk to someone like us.
You need to talk to FiveBlade.
Yeah, and really come and have a look at, you know, okay, well, what is these things? And I used the same terminology you just used, Lee, with back in Maritima. You know, there was the Maritima 1 division, the custom division, and it was because things were quiet. You're advertising the fact that you can customise because things, you know, were quiet. So you're trying to, you know, bring some more buyers out of the woodwork, and you know, but then that can be your worst enemy as well. Then, you know, when the sales do come, you know, you execute a design, you've got to and you launch a product that is, you know, hitting all of the marks, and it is, you know, very successful. Then you're trying to, it's you know, the dog's off the leash then, like you're trying to control those things. And that's what, you know, I'd said, you have to offer personalisation, not customisation. Like I said it, you know, time and time again through, you know, design, you know, to the sales network. I said, you know, this is what we need to work on. I said, and, you know, you're having a couple of arguments with someone, but, you know, to sort of say, look, they need options here and here and here. You know, that's just when you talk to all of the customers, you assess the market, some like this and some like this. You have to give them that option. So you can't just blanket and say, no, we're not doing that. You know, so you have to sort of design for both, but not do nothing and then have the customer, each individual customer, come to you and want to design it for you, and you're custom building everything along the way. So you need to do that sort of groundwork in the beginning, and really assess what those things might be and what they could potentially be, and have some sort of options they're designed in
Absolutely.
that they have the ability to personalise.
You'd remember that one of the problems that we had at Whitehaven Motor Yachts back in the day was that we went down this bespoke road. Bespoke is such a dangerous word. It's such a nice word, but it can be too far. And we ended up quite often when we're up against the might of Riviera and Maritimo in this decision paralysis.
Yes.
The paradox of choice, whatever cliche you want to use.
Yep.
So I think that's a really good point for FiveBlade going forwards, to be able to really help with that process as well, because it's easy to fall into it. We've all fallen into it.
Certainly.
And what you're saying is, sorry to cut across you there, Tom, but what you're saying is it isn't really no right or wrong answer to it. You need customisation, or you need a level of personalisation, but you plan for it, and you come in, you identify, and you help set the business up accordingly, and it's an eye opener for those people that are making the decision making. So it's all about the prepreparation, isn't it? And you
Understand the client need as well.
Yeah.
And you do that. In your early sort of customer engagement, market analysis, you can sort of see, through sales figures, what brands are selling with certain features, what brands are selling with other features. Get the feedback from your customer engagement to say, ask them those questions. Do you like it? And we're talking about anything. It could be, whether you like sedan or flybridge motor yachts to be, say, basic. But, it could be something a bit more intricate, like, do you like a, enclosed transom offshore style cockpit, or do you like a elevated sport cockpit with a garage? So let's take that, for instance, get that feedback off that customer engagement, at least from a beginning, know what sort of percentage of the market is wanting to go one way and wanting to go the other. Then you sort of have to internally assess too that you can't just go copycat, another brand and do something just because they have it. You got to come back and have some serious talks about, what is your company, what is your brand's identity when it comes to the product, and what are you known for, and what do you want to be going forward? Because you have to sort of go all the way. You can't just, like I said, be everything to everyone and piecemeal.
100%.
Yeah,
100%. I'm a massive fan of your journey. I'm a massive fan of some of the design stuff that you've brought to mainly Maritimo, but some of the other stuff you've done over the years. What's your favourite boat? What's your favourite design? You must have some sort of influence.
Yeah, this one will probably be a curveball to you, but I would say my R30 XCAT would be my favourite. So that was the first race boat I'd actually designed. We designed and built it, put it on pole in its first outing, got second in its first Grand Prix, but won the XCAT World Championship in its first season. And I think, with any other products and that I've done, it's design's one of those things where, it's up to the individual, looking at it, and you can see obviously those commercial results and whatnot, but racing's pretty easy, like there's wins and losses. So for that one, that was one design, that, yep, okay, we executed on what we set out to do. And so that was probably... all of them, probably be my favourite.
And just for our listeners, what was that powered by, Tom?
That was twin 400 ROS Mercury outboards. So it's a race version of the old 400 Verado, the six-cylinder Verado. Yeah.
In the old rule in racing, you're only as good as your last race, right, Johnny?
Yeah, I tell you what, and it kind of applies across a lot of things, that one, doesn't it now? I guess the other really big one, whilst we're in this design and I guess market appeal space, Tom, you did a lot. You changed the look and feel significantly, not just for the brand, but for the entire industry globally. That took drawing down on everything from Portofino hips to enclosed bridges and so on and so forth, many, many aspects, and creating a unique format for that to live and breathe. But it was more than that, because in doing that, especially in the case of the early craft, you created something that was an absolute sales success and a profitable part of your particular journey. How good does that make you feel, that whole side of your career to date?
Yeah, look, I'm incredibly proud of what myself and the team that I've been with, what we're able to accomplish, product-wise. we had some models that were incredible success. We had a couple of models in there as well that didn't do as good as we had hoped as well. So, and that's the thing. So you can go through all the process and all that too, and there's a lot of factors, that can influence it as well. But it's nothing quite like the feeling, of these projects. They're a long time, in the making. So my wife, it's going to be the most beautiful thing ever. Like I said, she's 6.5 months pregnant right now. Sorry, 7.5 months pregnant right now. But
only a month off.
Yeah,
mate.
but
So
9 months. But and just to see my child, at the end of that, it's going to be the most amazing thing ever. But I think on a smaller scale, these new product developments, they can be 2.5 years in the making. And then, so when you see customers, those that have, put their deposits down, they've actually, committed, these large sums of money to be, just oozing and ahhing over, a product that you and your team have put together. It is a very rewarding role, and that's why I love doing what I do, and I want to stay in the industry and in specifically this area, because it's such a rewarding, but it's also, when you look at a new product development sort of cycle too, it's never really the same. Like by the time you sort of get down the road, on a new model and come back around to start the sort of next one, and you've got overlap there as well. But it's a lot of time goes by. There's so much learning that goes into the next one as well. So every day sort of feels different in a way. You come back to it and what those sort of key milestones are like. Like you've always got those key moments where a boat splashes in the show, or splashes in the water for the first time, or it's its first showing at a boat show and people are able to step on it for the first time. So incredibly rewarding to sort of see those types of things and hear the feedback from your customers and your clients years later too, just on how much they've enjoyed your boat. So very blessed to be able to sort of have that.
I was just interested to know, some manufacturers say that they engage with their customers and develop product based on that feedback, and I'm always interested to know, because it's such a long cycle and how much the market can shift by the time that product is released. And then, you've got the other example of Steve Jobs that used to say, well, Apple will give the product, we'll give the market the product that we think that they need, not, I'm not going to wait for them to tell us. So where do you kind of sit in that whole scenario?
I think again that comes down to what your company values are, and what type of company you want to be. Are you wanting to be the innovator, that is just blowing the doors off all the time, like Apple, like that, is just something that is trying to push everything to the market, or are you going for the more pull approach and steady approach, and listening to sort of your customers and being there and being a long-standing sort of company and in that sort of structure. So it comes down to the customer, to the company, like I said, certainly there's times where there's big technology shifts or industry shifts, and there's new things that you have to sometimes not force onto your customers, but you don't necessarily have to always force it. It can be just that the market demand is just pulling it that way, and you want to do that. So certainly nothing wrong in being an innovator, but if you're a company that's typically had conservative customers that just come to you, that they know what type of product you build and they want that, and they want the next evolution of that, you're not going to go and power it with electric engines and make it foil, for the next model that comes out. It's just because you'll burn too far away from who you are as a company, I think. So that's important. But certainly you have to be in these product cycles. You're dead right. Everything from your navionics to this technology is changing. Competitors, can sometimes, customers you might have looking at an early drawing and an early spec, that might not be released to the public yet, and competitors might get a hold of it or something like that. So, we've had, all of that so that comes into, again, when you're designing the product too, just to allow a little bit of flexibility in the way the boat's tooled and that you can update it. And that's something, again, I sort of touched on. Looking at the long-term outlook, again, when you look at your capacity planning for new product, you're looking at your life cycles of your product too. It's you will have an average looking at your history of when you've released models as a company. So you get an idea of when the life cycle of that model's going to start dwindling and the sales are going to start dropping off. So you can pre-plan in an update, at around that time or just before that time. So you can be a bit proactive in making sure that there's not that steep fall off on sales on that particular model by being proactive rather than waiting, for the rain and having the top down per se. So
that's a bit of a balance, isn't it? Because it looks like a lot of manufacturers kind of jump onto the next best thing very quickly. Some models have a very short life, but we're not sort of privy to the sales numbers, I guess. But do you think a lot of them are very reactionary and do that? I mean, it's a massive timeline, massive cost, as we said.
I think a lot are. I think a lot do, react. And look, if a model has died and you had no plan, of what to do, like there's not many other options, is there? So, but then the key is as well, it's just understanding. That's where you have to look at what your capacity is for new product, because there's, if you're trying to cover, everything from 30 to 90 feet, and you can only tool a couple of boats a year or one boat a year or something like that, and that's like, as far as when I say tool, that's everything else too, all design overlapping through that. But you can say release one new model a year. Well, if you look back at your history and see that that the sales life cycle of that product and your product in history is going to die before you can replace them all, well, it's going to show up, isn't it? You're not going to not have the R&D capacity, the new product development capacity to be able to replenish all of those models, at a certain time. So that's important to know, because then that can govern what your range is going to be just rolling. What you are capable of at your current size. You can obviously plan growth in, but if you do that, and then you can sort of look at, okay, we need to get X amount of years, out of it by looking at history. We can plan an update that is less resource hungry than doing a whole new development. That might just give it another couple of years or a few more years on the tail end of that product's life cycle. And then we need, at the end of that, we know that we need to go for the next generation. So when you're doing a new tooling, and design of a new product, you're looking at, again, what you're not just trying to reinvent the wheel every time. You want to try and make modularity and include all of that. And so you sort of have that design language, in that generation sort of passing through the range. You don't want to be doing, that new every time, or you just lose that sort of that brand identity, and that if you just keep doing that. And you want to get that sort of lifespan out. So, customers can be upset too if you're just constantly replacing their boat, because, the boat they're in that's only a few years old, if it's just being superseded all the time, you're just destroying your brand value as well, on the resale market too. So it's a lot of factors to sort of to navigate, but it's that's, again, it's a lot in it. And you can see that when, someone new comes to the market and wants to build a new boat, you can see how the mistake can be made.
And you touched on it with modularity, and I was just going to ask you quickly about that, because it was more with the Maritimo journey. It was more than just the styling. There was a lot of clever stuff that was built in, and a lot of owners probably wouldn't know, and we won't go too deep into it, but there's a lot of sharing of componentry and systems and things that you've integrated, like sub-assemblies and that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of clever stuff happening in the evolution, not behind the skin, behind the look of the boat itself.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And that, again, that just came from understanding, what your capabilities are in terms of how many new models you can produce. So, with Maritimo, we looked at it and we tried to sort of have two models, that could be done off the one development. And in some cases, then we had sub-variants of those models that could sprout off those models. And all of a sudden, you can build a range very quickly off, a much lower sort of tooling cost. And it was very successful with that. Then what comes with that then is obviously the modularity that comes with all of that. So, modularity, obviously then gives you that repeatability in the manufacturing process as well. So you're having the sort of same thing over and over, then your supply chain, everything. So everything sort of falls in then, so that can, build that efficiency into the production process. And, that of course then enables you to give more value to your customer, with less waste. So, you can sort of price that boat where they're going to get all of the value in the boat that they need, and but not necessarily, by making the cost so absorbent that it's sort of non-feasible.
Yeah, efficiencies are good, especially when you've got a deadline like Skib's looming and you've got a new model to launch, so you've got to get it out the door. And there's a few of those stories along the way, I'm sure.
Yep, there's always been some sleepless nights, in the weeks before Century Code Boat Show.
Yep. Yeah. Well, we'll touch on boat shows in a minute. Another topic sort of dear to our heart is greenwashing. Obviously, Maritimo, a large manufacturer, other manufacturers like Riviera, big products, big motors, big diesels, recreational boating. We're all pushing, I guess, towards more environmental outcomes, better outcomes. But there doesn't seem to be anything really in the space at the moment that's going to replace the power output of a diesel. So where do you sit? I mean, greenwashing, marketing spin, we're all probably just raising it to say, just everybody, keep your spidey senses on for wading through the Bulldust. Where are you sitting? Are you sort of looking at the future at the moment as well and working with manufacturers and got your finger on the pulse in that space?
Yeah, certainly. And, it depends on the manufacturer and, their customer again, as to sort of what their policies are and things like that. So from a personal opinion, it's a bit of the push and pull sort of thing. There's real tangible things, I think, that customers, sometimes want to see. They, fuel economy, so you've got the engine companies, they compete over, bringing their fuel economy down, and that's something that customers in the market will see that, and this boat's its fuel burn, its range, its performance it's getting. So those tangible things, I think, that are sort of they're not a direct. They have a real sort of undercurrent of what's pushing them along to sort of make boats greener. So you're looking at, we're all trying to build boats lighter, with the same sort of strength. You're trying to reduce that fuel consumption, increase that efficiency. So, that I think is what pushes sort of boat companies along most. And when it comes to greenwashing, there's certainly there's overreach in legislation. We've seen that in a lot of areas. You talk about electrification. In my years at Maritimo, take for instance, I've never been asked by a serious boat buyer or prospective customer, like, will you come down to the real? I've been asked, when, or like, is it happening, and obviously things like that. But in a real world scenario of someone asking, I never got asked in the time I've been there, for full electrification. I think hybrid systems, I think that's something I think we will start seeing more of maybe towards the end of the next decade. I don't think the technology's quite there yet, but that you could probably see there's legislation in certain regions about coming into these sort of silent zones and e-zones, and so that will sort of probably push as that becomes more common space. And there may be some benefits, if you can have the technology there that isn't cost prohibitive to the customer, and that's ultimately what's going to drive that demand. If they can get a better boating experience, for the same cost or only a little bit more cost, then that will start supplying itself. I think the greenwashing, aspects of it, it comes in where there's been legislation passed or it's being pushed down, and there hasn't been that proper consultation, I think, with the industry in that region. I think and that's not saying all legislation's bad. I think we're all, when we go swimming in an anchorage or something like that off the back, I think we're all glad that there is legislation around you're not allowed to dump your black tank or something like that in the middle of an area. There's things that as human beings we just need to be policed on and making sure we're doing the right thing. But there's certainly overreach out there. Look at the East Coast of the US with the Whale Strike Act and the Speed Limit Act and things like that, where they obviously just hadn't gone through. They've been selective in who they've talked to in terms of bodies and stakeholders and things like that, and just passed something through that's just been then had that huge backlash and uproar over something that is like a not going to make that much of a difference in terms of through what is going to be such a big impact on so many people within the industry. So I think the market definitely wants to see just companies that are doing the responsible thing in terms when it comes to just being ethical in their procurement process and things like that. Take the teak decking, for example. Like in the EU, they put a blanket ban on teak from Myanmar, and rightly so. And it started with, I think, a lot of manufacturers sourcing from Indonesia and things, which is where a lot of the industry sources it from, Brazil and other places. But then that led to some great creations, probably in the synthetic space. I think teak decking and the early products, very extremely hot to walk on. They probably broke down and things like that, and weren't as functional and reliable long term, to that point where they were being replaced. But it did drive some innovation, and things like that. So I think it's just, again, just comes back to common sense approach, but certainly, and just balance. I think the world needs a bit of that right now. I think if you put the hat on that everything's got to be electric and everything's got to be green, I think you're mad. But if you're sort of staunch and not moving and saying this is all crap as well, and we should all just keep everything as it is, well, it's not really improving and making things better as well. So that's probably where I sit, and probably where a lot of manufacturers sit too. Probably just being logical with it.
Well, I guess you've gone to a lot of boat shows. You've participated in them. I know you've walked around many, as well as being an exhibitor, clearly. So we've had a long-ranging discussion during the courses of the shows with various people. To our mind, boat shows need to enhance, develop and improve and possibly even, dare we say it, modernise. Can you tell us a little bit about the whole boat show journey for you and what you'd like to see occur globally as well as locally?
Yeah, I love this topic. I think this is a very, very juicy topic, and I think boat shows are certainly, they have their need and their place. I think especially if you look at a floating boat show, a marina-based boat show, and the types of products that are going to be, from your super yachts down to even the your smaller bow rider craft and things like that, center consoles. I think we're in an industry where people the market needs to come and feel and touch, smell, just those things that I think you're just not going to get from a digital experience. So I think there is that need for that sort of present experience where you can do that. It is a great opportunity as well, as much as it can be a headache, where you just have all the stakeholders in the industry, from your manufacturers, suppliers, industry bodies, customers, all in the one space at once. I do think boat shows, they suit. It's a great opportunity for new brands, startups, for the market to be able to walk past and go, well, let's just go and have a look at this new product, versus established brands that have been around for a long time, that might not see as that much of an important need for boat shows that already have a long established customer base. So I think there is a lot of great positives. In saying that, and having worn the hat from a sort of more longer established manufacturer, you look at the model, the current model, the way it is structured, and you're thinking we're paying this absorbent price to put our boats and show our boats amongst all of our competitors, and everyone's gouging their own pricing and offering specials and deals, coming after your product, coming on your product. Then you've got your suppliers and your suppliers' competitors also all vying for your time, media vying for your time, all whilst you're sitting there trying to also sell boats, provide your customers and prospective customers with a great experience, and make a return. And so that can be incredibly expensive. And I think you see there's all the landscape has changed as well. I think you've got to what it was 20 years ago and further back. These shows, they begin many years before the actual show in terms of product releases. Then you've got marketing campaigns that lead in months before and months after the show. So I think that's where the toll it takes from a resource perspective on manufacturers, especially the larger ones, I think is where you're seeing them consolidating, I think putting bigger displays on and going to less shows, I think. And that's where you're seeing this, I think, globally with these sort of consolidation of all these boat shows. And because it's such a high cost to be there. And, if the returns aren't there, then that's you've got to sort of make those decisions. So then you get to that balancing act of weighing up, okay, if a direct return isn't there, or we're only getting this little return, or if we go and take that entire budget and chuck it at marketing, and see what return we can get from that, or run our own private events, with customer experiences and things like that there, where you haven't got your competition in that space, and see returns from that. There's still that aspect, that you have to show a presence there to the market and have, capture that sort of percentage of the market that isn't your current customers, and you want to attract new in. And but it is. It's a. I don't have the answer as to what it is, but I certainly think I think it's prime for some disruptor to come in. I think we've seen it in the automotive industry and what's happened to their sort of trade shows, and they've all gone, much more heavier focus, I think, on their internal events, and then just being very selective as to what their prime shows are. So it's a very sort of interesting question. I mean, you look at the larger companies as well, like you're thinking about your customers there at the show, so it's not just about the wining and dining experience and giving your customers that experience at the show, looking after them. You're showcasing yourself to prospective customers. They're looking at that, people having that experience, but there's a part of it as well that you've got to invest that much to be able to sort of cater that, because you want to keep your customers on your stand too. You don't want them walking around the boat show shopping, and being tempted at other brands as well. So, these established brands have to invest a lot when they are at there, and you see some of the Italian and British brands, and you go to Fort Lauderdale shows and the displays they put on, Dusseldorf and whatnot. It's an incredible cost, and so I think there'll be some change, coming for sure. I think you take Sentry Cove, for instance. They've been able to make a success of it. I think being Malfa, they have the facilities there to run it. Versus the BIA they've always been on the back foot. And with the added cost that they didn't pass on to the vendors at the show to run it in Darling Harbour there, and for us at Maritimo, go back to, we had our last show in Sydney in 2019. It was 2020. There was still a show going to happen in 2020, and we had already made the decision we weren't going at that show. So Riviera was still going, but we had actually made that decision before they actually missed that year. And that was based on basically the expense to be there, the return not quite being there. It's a hard show to get to, from us as being a Queensland-based manufacturer, it is an expensive show, and there's one sort of so there's that added, the cost of that show, and then it's actually a very busy show, and this is where you got to sort of walk this line, and I think where a disruptor, if they come in, will sort of look at this, I think is it's so busy to the fact that the stand, is that packed. The queues to get on the boats were so big. So again, we're faced with that decision. Okay, well, we have to, provide a bigger area. It's going to cost more. But what was happening as well is, our prospective buyers were looking. They'd come a few years prior, and they're like, you could barely get on a boat. You had to queue up, and you tell them a time, and they had to make an appointment, come back, and it became
people love
a
that.
headache. That they just said, okay, well, next year we'll just go up to Sentry Cove.
The reason they were buying a boat was to get away from everyone. And
so it was so busy, and so then we went through the COVID period, and they missed. I can't remember now if it was 1 or 2 years they missed. I think they missed us the 1 year and were back. But and then there's a lot of brands chose not to go, and for various reasons. The proximity in time to Sentry Cove as well was a big one, but and by that stage, that they did hold the first show again. The order books of everyone were starting to stretch out. Everyone was behind. You had the supply chain issues, things like that. So everyone's late on their deliveries. So the last thing you also want to do, you're borrowing a customer's boat for Sentry Cove show. You couldn't turn around to them as well and say, or to another customer again and say, can we borrow your boat again for a couple of months while, we drive it down to Sydney, put hours on it, so it was an interesting time. But I remember, we had been sort of communicated when the BIA called us and said, we would love to have you and things like that. We did voice, what our frustrations with the show were. And I remember sort of vividly one of the meetings where they came back and they said, "Oh, we've changed it up. We've realised all of our mistakes, but so we're going to get a lot more people through, a lot more people on your boats this year. But the prices are going up a little bit, and you're like, it's just not going to work, So, and that's where you look at the cost to be in Darling Harbour, the time of year, like they were other factors, the exhibition centre is obviously a big part of that cost, and that's where I say there's this balancing act, because you want it to be a public show where the public has the opportunity to get on boats, and I'm talking about everyone, and that's where, with this digital age and everyone trying to, take leads and things like that, you have to be, more attentive to everyone that comes on the stand and, capturing that lead. So it's just more resource hungry to sort of manage that whole process and after the show as well, as much as you can try and class the serious buyers, from the general public. It's you have to treat every lead, not every lead, but you bucket them into what's hot, warm, cold, and whatnot. But
well, I think COVID brought a whole bunch of new people to boating. A lot of people didn't come up from a 20, 30, 40 footer. They were stepping into a 70, 75.
So it's not up to you, each salesperson and and staff member on the stand to sort of classify that person whether they're going to buy a boat or not. You have to give everyone the time on the product and take through, and that's where it's you have to look at it. There's the balance of there being having everything there at the one thing, from fishing rods and sunglasses all the way through to 100-foot super yachts, and so that works if it's consolidated, I think in one event, and it's big enough to sort of spread the crowds out, and where these brands can still sort of balance their attendees and give them the time and attention that is required. But that's where I think there may be something, I think, and some disruptor. It wouldn't surprise me, if you see come along that does something more specific to the classes, of products, rather than just trying to be everything to everyone in the one show.
Just honing in on that word disruptor, I do have a question about Maritimo boat show strategy, and I hope you can answer this because it's always bothered me. When you used to take the race boat to the boat show, when it had an engine in it, what was the strategy when you started it up? Because speaking of disruption, it was always when I was in the middle of a very important conversation with a client.
It was funny. It was actually through that period, I was actually with Landra, and the show had actually banned it starting up because they had so many people come to the dock. That section of the dock had actually sunk the dock at one point. So they banned it, and there was a lot of complaints, probably from yourself, Lee, about the noise. You're trying to close a deal, and next minute you have to stop talking for a few minutes.
I would have thought they would have heard you over two Chevy V8s, Lee.
It was fairly regular, that's for sure.
So I can't speak to when they did run it, but it was. They were putting the actual real race boat in at that point in time. The boat was rigged. They had, obviously didn't have propellers on and things like that, and they'd protected some of the drive and all of the submerged, aspects of the boat. But look, that boat, they were the real race boats back then. So the boat that was in there for the sort of previous few years, it was an older boat that had sort of been de-rigged and was only used just for displays. So as much as we, probably would have loved to have, disrupted. No, but look, there's all sorts of tactics, used at boat shows and things like that, and position of where you are and stand design, how you funnel people in and things like that. Sort of the honey trap, philosophy per se. So
I mean, the design of that Santry Cove show, it's pretty static. The design of the Maritimo stand at the Santry Cove show, and it's very, very good.
Yeah. No, it was. We did. We put a lot of focus in on how that would allow people that weren't wanting to come on the stand, that they could still sort of pass through and observe the boats and look at the race boat. So if they weren't coming to look at the actual product and just wanted to look at the race boat, they didn't necessarily have to check themselves in and things like that. So there is, we look at all of that. Didn't think about that for FiveBlade, but that's probably something that we could get into.
Well, I was just going to say that. I think that could be
another.
another service for FiveBlade, because there's a lot of experience there, a lot of knowledge that you've gained over the years, and certainly you've stood at enough boat shows and stood on the back of a number of boats and gone around the globe doing all of that as well. So,
and they're a highly important, piece of the sort of marketing strategy of within the industry. Like there's a large percentage, a very large percentage of sales do come. It fluctuates each year. Obviously sometimes you'll sell more at the show, sometimes you'll do more sort of in between shows and things like that. But certainly it's a vital part of the strategy, and a big chunk of the budget, goes towards shows. Yeah.
I guess as a fan of the show, Tom, and we are very appreciative of that. I think there's one question we'd be dying to ask, and that is, where do you stand on the Wes for PM question, given that it's all over social media and certainly quite a few phone calls and texts and emails? How do you feel about the Wes for PM question?
We talk about Wes Moxie.
Yeah.
I didn't realise he's running.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people going he should run. How would you feel about that?
I'd have to say, I think, given some of the options lately, I think you'd have to vote for him, wouldn't you?
Wouldn't you? Yeah.
No, that'd be interesting to see. But no, I think Wes is doing a great job of what he's doing at Riv. So
I know you have a few discussions with him. So I just thought it'd be a lot of fun to just get the smile going.
Thank you, John. Well, Tom Barry-Cotter, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on Bulwarks and Bulldust this afternoon. And good luck with this new venture, FiveBlade. We wish you the best success. You might even have a couple of your own little pet projects that might even come through your own methodology at some point in time.
Yeah, there's a few on the drawing board already. Yeah,
terrific. So we look
long
forward.
Term, that would be that's something that might see. But
you can't stop the old brain from ticking over, I'm sure, and it won't just be for others. I'm sure there'll be a few things in there for yourself. Thanks to all the viewers and listeners for tuning in for this episode of Bulwarks and Bulldust, and thanks very much to Pantaenius, our sponsor for the series. We really appreciate your support. I'm going to throw it to my colleague here, Lee, to do his social media wrap-up, because he does it so well.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow us on all the social media channels, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, wherever you can find us. Please follow us. We appreciate your support and look forward to seeing you in the future on Bulwarks and Bulldust.
Thanks, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Good on you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Barry-Cotter, that was absolutely fantastic. It's been great to catch up. Lovely to hear all about FiveBlade and what you've been up to. Here's a little cap as a bit of a memento, and thanks very much for joining us in the captain's chair by Melfi Designs.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, Wally, and look forward to hearing many more episodes.
Terrific.
All the
Thanks,
best.
Tom.